We're going to continue working with writing two-step equations. Sometimes this is a tough unit for students, so we're going to spend an extra day on it. Okay, just to get a little extra practice. Let's start up top with our I cans. Just like last section, you want to be able to say, I can determine what I do not know in a given problem and determine what my variable should represent. That's usually the toughest part, determining what your variable is going to represent. Okay? And then establishing everything else that should go around that, creating our equation. So secondly, we want to be able to say, I can write and solve two-step equations. I'm just going to do two examples today. So follow along, try to comprehend what's happening, and pay specific attention. That's a terrible star right there. Pay specific attention to these three steps down here, because these are going to guide you whenever you're being asked to write an equation. If you can't remember the process, you can always refer to these. Suppose you are saving money to buy a cell phone that costs $200. You already saved $60 and plan to save $12 each week. How many weeks will you need to save? Well, if you have no idea where to start, if you don't know how to define a variable yet, you can always look back down at our suggestions. First step is, what are you trying to find? Well, this is the question that's being asked. The thing that we don't know is how many weeks we'll need to save. So step number 2 says that usually becomes your variable. So define your variable. X is going to equal, X is going to equal the number of weeks. Okay, number of weeks. That's the thing that we don't know. That's why it's the variable, because we don't know what that variable is. We're going to try and solve for that variable. So now we have to try and set up an equation based on that variable, based on number of weeks. Suppose you're saving money to buy a cell phone that costs $200. You already saved $60. Okay, so that's good to know. We already have $60 in the bank, and we plan to save $12 each week. So after 1 week, let's think about this. After 1 week, you should have $12 more saved, right? And after 2 weeks, you should have another $24. And after 3 weeks, probably have $36 because you're saving $12 each week. So we already have $60, but if we add to that $12 per week, we should be able to come up with our final total amount. Okay, so 12 times x, since x is number of weeks, you can plug in any number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. So $12 times every week you save, plus your $60, what should that equal? Well, hopefully, since we're only trying to determine how long it's going to take us to save up $200, you're noting that when you add those two things together, it should give you a total of $200. That's what we're trying to save up to get. So 200 equals, and then you tell me how you're going to get to that 200. Well, I already have $60, and I'm going to add $12 per week. Now you have a beautiful equation here. Very simple to solve. It should only take you 2 steps. So remember, if we're trying to get x by itself, we always want to get rid of everything that's not attached to x first. So since we're adding 60 to 12x, in order to get rid of that positive 60, we've got to subtract our 60, and we must do it on both sides, because we've got to keep this equation balanced. Okay, so we're left over with 12x equals $140. And then this is 12 times x, so the last step is, in order to undo that multiplication, you've got to divide. So divide by 12 on both sides, and you're left with x equals about, you guys are going to have to do some long division, 140 divided by 12. It's going to be about 11.67, or 11 2/3 weeks. And you guys are starting to freak out because you're like, oh my gosh, we're solving equations now. But not only are we solving equations, yes, there can definitely be decimal and fractional answers. There's no question. So just because you get a decimal or fraction does not mean that you're wrong. You just need to ask yourself, does it make sense in the context of this problem? Okay, if it takes me 11 weeks and I save $12 per week, that's like 130 something dollars plus 60. That's almost 200, so that's close. Okay, so if you plug it in and it's close, it means you're probably right. So just a reminder of how to check this. You do like 11.67. You're plugging that in for x, so it's going to be 12 times 11.67 plus 60 equals 200. Okay, multiply those guys together, add 60. It's going to be very, very, very close. And you have to acknowledge that the only reason it's not exact is because we rounded right here. When we did 140 divided by 12, it was like 11.66666666, but we just rounded to the hundredths place. So that gives you just a slightly different answer on the left-hand side here. Okay, it's not exactly 200, but really, since we rounded, that's perfect. It does check. Let's try one more example here. And if you want to try and work ahead of me, that'd be awesome, because that way you can actually try this on your own and see how you stand with this type of problem. Okay, so in the 2012 Summer Olympics, the United States won 11 more medals than Russia. Together they won 195 medals. How many medals did the United States win? What are we looking for? What do we not know? Is how many medals the US won. So choose whatever variable you want. I'm just going to choose x. And there you go. X is going to equal US medals. Oops, sorry about that. Wow, my writing is just poor. Let's do this. X equals US medals. Okay. Well, if X is the US medals, how do we represent the number of medals that Russia won? Well, X is just a number, okay? So if the US won 11 more than Russia, that also means that Russia won 11 less than the US, right? So in order to represent that with an expression, you would just say X minus 11, and that equals Russian medals. Okay, Russian medals. And that makes sense. US medals, so even if, let's say they won 50, then 50 minus 11, that means Russia would win 39. Obviously that's not right, because those don't add up to 195. But I'm just plugging in a number. That's what that means. Now, in order to solve this, we've already done step 1 and step 2. Everything else is based on our variable. So our variable is US medals. It says together, both countries won 195 medals. That's a very important piece of information. Together, it means add them together, guys. So take the US medals, add them to the number of Russian medals, and that should equal 195 total medals. And now here we have an equation. So if you look back at your guidelines for solving an equation, you should always ask yourself, can I simplify this before I start doing anything to both sides of the equation? Yes, I have some like terms, so let's combine our like terms. X plus x should be 2x, and that's all I'm seeing right now. So 2x minus 11 equals 195. Now, we just have a regular equation. How do we solve it? Let's get rid of what's not attached to x first. So since we subtracted 11 here, let's add 11, because negative 11 and positive 11 will cancel out. That's the whole goal. We're trying to get rid of that 11 so we can get closer and closer to having x completely on its own. So that's 206. And our last step, to get x by itself, just divide by 2. Just divide by 2 on both sides, and you should be left with x equals 103. So my question for you is, what does that mean? in the context of this problem, since X means or represents the number of U.S. medals, that means the U.S. won 103 medals. Okay? How many medals did Russia win? Well, 103 minus 11. Whoops. 103 minus 11 is going to equal 92. That means 103 plus 92. 103 plus 92 better equal what number? That's right, 195. So right now I'm checking our answer, because U.S. medals plus Russian medals better equal 195. And it does. So that means your X is correct. It means we've done this all correctly. Okay, guys. Your summary is right here. I'll let you read that on your own. It's the same summary that we had just the other day, because we're talking more about writing your two-step equations. Hopefully this is helpful. Come in tomorrow with your thinking caps so we can get back to work.